We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
I'm really excited for today's episode to talk about hypnotic regression.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation.
Yeah. This is, man, and this is such a cornerstone of the way that, like, the alien narrative was built and an abduction narrative was built during the 80s. You know, like this was considered a scientific method for getting stories of abduction from people. And it's just all bullshit. It's crazy. It's so flawed.
Yeah, and I think the research that was done to show that, like, hypnosis is not admissible in court, really. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not good evidence for trials. But to me, I was thinking about that because I feel like this hypnosis and alien abduction thing, like, bled into popular culture where it became a whole thing that hypnosis was, you know, revealing all sorts of things that people were then, like, accusing other people of doing, and crimes were being, like, unearthed and all this kind of thing. And I feel like that all came from this, and from this idea that hypnosis was letting these people relive their alien abductions. And so I feel like it had such a huge effect, like, not only on ufology, but also, like, just popular culture in general.
Yeah, it was a weird, like, wild frontier at that time where we thought we had unlocked some part of the brain that you could get in there and find these memories that people weren't recalling, and there would be all this trauma in there that you couldn't remember or understand or whatever. And it was the satanic panic. You know, the McMartin preschool trial with the kids and talking about, like, ritual satanic abuse and stuff like that never happened. It was Michelle Remembers. It was, like, all of this shit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all based on the same flawed research, quote unquote research.
I think it was a lot of, like, child abuse that I feel like people remembered, like, child abuse and, like, sexual molestation and things like that. And listeners, please hear me. That shit is shockingly common. So I'm not saying that it wasn't happening. It was. But, like, this relationship, like the hypnosis relationship to it all, was, I think, probably problematic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we should, at the top of this episode, as we're talking about it, we should throw out there that, you know, there will be some tangential discussions of sexual assault in this episode. Not real sexual assault because it didn't happen, because these abductions weren't real, but we're still going to have moments of that here. So for anyone who might be sensitive to that, just know that that's coming, and we can alert when we're going to talk about it too. Yeah, what a great way to intro.
Yeah, I don't really know how to intro that.
Get that segue going, EJ.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that curveball.
Over to
there.
you.
Over to me. All right, here to bring us some levity, we got. I'm me. I'm going to start with me because I didn't talk about that stuff. It was you guys. I was. I don't know what I was thinking about while you guys were going on about that. Probably the cappuccino that I have, which is very delicious. I am EJ. And we've got Maddie J.
Hey.
And Katie.
Hi.
And we're going to talk about the Allagash Four.
And we're slaying monsters.
And we are slaying monsters. I'm really good at this.
Good morning, EJ.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I need caffeine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
Oh, yeah. So we are going to talk about the Allagash Four and their abduction, and we are going to get into what happened when they were in that spaceship, or at least what they think happened and what Raymond Fowler decides happened during their time in the spaceship. So in our last episode, after suffering head trauma, self-proclaimed alien abductee Jim Weiner began experiencing hallucinations. He decided that these were snippets of a repressed memory based around the stories of other contactees like the Hills and Betty Andreessen and Whitley Strieber. Convinced that he and his camping buddies had been abducted in the Allagash wilderness in the late 70s, Jim sought out ufologist Raymond Fowler in hopes of understanding what was going on. By which I really mean Jim sought out Raymond Fowler to confirm his own beliefs and biases. Make no mistake, by 1988, Jim Weiner and Raymond Fowler, when they connected at this UFO convention, they were both fully convinced that alien abduction was happening, and Jim was convinced that he was an abductee. Unfortunately, this is going to play into Fowler's own biases. As an untrained hypnotist and a proponent of the alien narrative, Fowler is very much on the lookout for people who are going to support his own theory that aliens are coming down and snatching up ordinary folks all the time. In a way, what follows and what we're going to talk about here is kind of a folie à deux. Both of these guys need the other person to confirm what they already think is true and what they very much believe is true. And they will play into each other's delusions and sort of unintentionally yes and each other until they build an entire narrative story out of nothing.
Just for our listeners and for myself to remember, we are in 1988 now.
Yes.
Or we're going to get there during this episode.
Correct.
Remind everyone when that night on the lake actually happened. What year was that? Was that the early 70s?
It was the late 70s. So it was
the late 70s.
It was August of 1976.
Okay. So just so we're all on the same page, like when they're talking about this and they're convinced that he's convinced he was an alien abductee, it's like 12 years later. So it's not like the next year.
No, not at all. In fact, in intervening time, what has happened is Jim Weiner, the sort of spearhead of all of this, had a home accident. He fell off a ladder. He suffered head trauma. We talked in the last episode, he had tempolimbic epilepsy, which causes, these feelings of like discomfort, paranoia. He also started keeping a dream journal, realized that he was suffering from sleep paralysis and hypnagogic hallucinations. And also, in that intervening decade, he started to get really deep into the UFO and alien world and read about the Betty Andreessen case and Whitley Strieber's communion and just all the other literature that was circulating around at that time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, but there's been a long time where everybody, all four guys, all that they thought happened is they went out night fishing, saw a weird light in the sky that was kind of shimmery, pulsating, lost some time on the lake, and that was it. Like, to them, nothing else happened. They saw no evidence to believe that anything happened.
It makes me really sad that Jim didn't get a real doctor.
Yeah.
And maybe he did at some point and he just didn't. The doctor, this is the thing about Western medicine, and this is the problem with Western medicine. They're not exciting enough. We need more Patch Adams. We need more like bells and whistles, like because people want the excitement, so they go to these other like means of these other answers. So why can't our doctors at UPenn just, you remember in Mary Poppins with Dick Van Dyke and his awesome, like his walking band where he had like the big bass drum and the top hat, and why can't our doctors wear those things and be like that? There would be less stories of alien abductions if our doctors were more exciting. Give
if
us
they were like, drum roll, please.
Yeah.
You have insert whatever disease this guy had. I forget.
Yeah, I want a song about lupus.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I'm just throwing this out there for all of our doctors right now. Like, you could change the world. You could,
Because they don't have enough to do.
Yeah, I know.
definitely
You
not.
could crush this like Chinese medicine, holistic, whatever crap in one fell swoop with some really exciting bells and whistles.
I do.
Or, if we just made healthcare free so old people could go talk to people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
that would definitely be part of it too.
that would be awesome, Katie.
If you just had access to what you needed when you needed it in terms of healthcare, yeah, that would make a big difference.
Education and healthcare, I think we're more likely to have abductions, alien abductions, than get free healthcare in this country.
The direction we're going, I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
The aliens are getting here first.
Yep, for sure.
We've decided we're going to go all the way back and start over again to
Right.
get ahead of where we were.
Exactly. Let's go back.
We're going to retrace.
Yeah. Prehistoric times. Here we come.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
I think the other thing about this too is that in a way, this is a very early example of doing like your own research into your condition on like, WebMD before WebMD was a thing. He saw some symptoms that were vaguely similar to alien abduction and started reading about alien abduction and then went with the doctor's opinion who confirmed what he thought was going on with himself. Instead of listening to his doctor.
He already thought that was what was going on with him before that doctor that we yelled about last time told him to go see the alien abduction doctor.
I don't know specifically what came absolutely first.
Yeah.
But whatever the actual genesis was, that was the thing that when he started doing his own research, that's what resonated with him. And he decided that he and his research were more correct than the actual trained medical professional who had gone to school for his condition. Yeah. As I said, these two guys, Jim Weiner, Raymond Fowler, they connected at the 1988 PSI Symposium in Waltham, Massachusetts. This was a gathering of ufologists, psychics, and other fringe theorists featuring lectures and events from leading researchers, and we can put very heavy quotes around those researchers. Raymond Fowler was there to promote his book, The Watchers, which was now the third book in the Betty Andreessen case. And importantly, by now, 1988, Fowler had become convinced that he, much like Betty Andreessen, had also been abducted by aliens. He concluded that by comparing his own memories to Andreessen's and found out, wow, they're remarkably similar to what she experienced. Which, of course they were, because they were all coming from the same person, him. But this realization that he had been abducted too is going to color all of his future research, including his work with the Allagash Four.
So, hold up. Did he ever have like a moment like Betty Andreessen where he like saw a light in the sky, whatever? Or is he just like, has he basically just like fully implanted a memory on himself? Because I'm being mean here, but he decided that he didn't want to be the non-special one. So now he's like convinced himself that he also has been abducted. Like,
yeah, at some point, I don't know if he ever had like saw a light in the sky kind of. I mean, he probably did, because we've all seen weird light in the sky at some point, right? But
have we? I don't think I ever have.
I've seen something I can't explain, but
the weirdest thing I saw was when I sent you all that picture of the like weird angel cloud that like wasn't moving.
Yeah.
That was weird.
Yeah,
because I'm just like, what made that shape? I don't know.
Jesus, Katie. Jesus.
Took me a second. I thought you were just saying like Jesus, Katie. And I was like, oh, she means Jesus.
No, Jesus made the shape.
Jesus Christ, Katie.
Wait, EJ, you saw a light in the sky?
Yeah, I did. It was at night. And honestly, because I am not in the military or an astronomer, I don't know what the fuck it was. I'm just an average Joe, so obviously I'm going to think it was an alien.
Well, we saw a meteor or a comet. It was a meteor. We saw a meteor here that was wild because it was a moving light really fast across the sky with a tail too. You remember that?
I do. That was fucking cool.
That was cool. Yeah.
No, this like zipped around in the sky and disappeared. It was...
Oh, that is weird.
It was crazy.
Okay.
But yeah, so Fowler, I think the thing about Fowler is that when he started doing these investigations and these hypnotic sessions with people, what kept coming up is that their recollections were triggering things in him that made him say, oh, that's a lot like what a vague memory that I have. I think he probably had some kind of sleep paralysis as well or something like that. And then the more he got into it and the more he started to have sessions done on himself and stuff, the more he was like, oh yeah, I'm also an abductee. And then it became a whole situation where he was doing the research to confirm what happened to him because he was like hinging his worldview on it.
You're getting into so many layers of like confirmation bias and like your incentives. That's what I'm trying to say. Like your incentives become all wrong.
Yes. Yeah. Not a good time to do research, but here we are. Jim Weiner was very quick to spot Raymond Fowler at the symposium and approached him. Now, in his experience, Fowler found that a lot of these people would come and they just wanted somebody to listen to their stories. And so he graciously listened as Jim recounted his experiences. And boy, did he talk. He followed Fowler around like a puppy, asking questions, dropping little bits of his story, while this poor author was trying to autograph books and set up equipment for his lecture. But throughout this barrage of words, Fowler managed to pull out something valuable. Jim hadn't been alone during his abduction. There were 3 other people, and one of them was his twin brother. And that clicked in Fowler's mind, and that was the factor that convinced him to leave his merch table and take Jim out to a little side room at the conference and just hear the entirety of the story. Up until this point, alien abduction had generally been a solo event. You know, you had Betty and Barney Hill, which involved multiple people, but that case was now 2 decades old. Barney had passed away at this point. And on top of that, Betty wasn't really doing herself a whole lot of favors. Like we talked a little bit. She had been obsessed with UFOs and was giving like disastrous lectures and had kind of become a laughing stock of the community. So you can see why the Allagash abductions really appealed to Fowler, because here was a chance to study not only a multiple witness abduction event, but also to study it with twin brothers. That's a unique kind of control that you have that you really have never had before in the history of alien abduction. To Fowler, this could be, in his own words, quote, indisputable evidence that UFO abductions are real. For the rest of the year, Fowler performed background checks on the Weiners and Charles Foltz and Chuck Rack. And local character witnesses confirmed that all 4 of these guys were in good standing. They're probably not lying about this kind of thing for fun or profit or anything like that. And the most exciting piece of evidence that Fowler got came from a ranger with the Maine Department of Forestry who actually remembered 4 young men who reported a strange light in the sky in August of 1976. That meant, to Fowler anyway, this is real, legitimate, actually happened.
And who saw the light?
All 4 boys.
No. I thought you said somebody else talked to the Department of Forestry and said they saw a light.
Okay. No, the ranger said that he remembered 4 guys who reported a strange light.
Oh.
The ranger didn't see the light.
So they went to the ranger and said, like, hey,
we saw this weird thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's less impressive.
Okay.
I thought a fifth person or somebody
Nope.
else saw
like,
something
also
too.
saw a light.
Nope.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nope.
Yeah. The thing that's wild about what you just said, though, is Fowler was like, okay, it's like that this is real. No. What is real is they saw a weird light in the sky.
Yeah.
That is real. That actually happened. Doesn't mean everything that follows is real.
But that's the thing about building a narrative, though, is that it's
Yeah.
more powerful when there's something real thrown in
Yeah.
and more believable.
Also, I think he was concerned about being taken for a ride by somebody who was just trying to like get 15 minutes of fame or something like that. And so the fact that he could confirm that, yes, they actually went on a camping trip. Yes, they actually saw something out there.
And they told someone when it happened.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's
that-
like legit. Yeah.
That made it so it wasn't just some guy who was trying to make him look like a fool.
Right. Okay.
Convinced now that Jim Weiner was telling the truth, Fowler agreed to set up a hypnotic memory regression session with him. And in January of 1989, the two of them, along with solar physicist David Webb, were in the living room of MUFON correspondent and high school English teacher Tony Constantino. Now, notice, once again, we have no licensed therapist there. In fact, just like the Betty Andreessen case, David Webb, who conducted the memory regressions on her, was a solar physicist. His degree is studying the sun. I can't stress this enough. None of these people have studied memory beyond the point that it fits into their own narratives.
But real doctors are such a drag. I mean, come
It's
on.
way more fun when you can just do what you want.
Yeah.
That's what's crazy to me is that even if, let's say that this was real, okay? Let's say it's not, but let's say that you could unlock some deep, hidden, repressed memory in someone this way. Why would you think you could do it without experience and training? I don't get it. I guess because you've done it before. Like you've done it before, and so you think you can?
Maybe?
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to come up with a good analogy. And one that I thought of is like DIY, right? Take a show like Property Brothers or something.
Sure.
Where they go into a house that's been flipped or was something, and they start opening it up to do their renovations. And they're like, what the fuck is going on in here? Like, somebody did do it. It was functioning. It did work. I'm using air quotes for those who can't see me. But like, it was not done correctly.
Yeah.
It might have blown up in the homeowners' faces anytime. Fortunately, usually it hasn't. And I feel like maybe this is a similar thing, right? Like, you can technically perform this. It doesn't mean that you're doing it right or that you're going to get good or valid results from it. I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I just think of it because it's a medical procedure. You know, I just think like you wouldn't perform surgery. Well, maybe you would. Maybe there are people out there who would just perform surgery untrained on themselves and others.
People do.
I don't want to yuck people's yums.
Yeah.
No, I mean, people do.
Yeah,
People are crazy.
I know.
Like, all love to people. I love people. But we're a little weird. And we can really get it in our heads that'll be fine.
Yep.
If we just like do something.
What's really crazy about all of this whole hypnotism thing, is that by this point, it had actually been pretty thoroughly debunked, even inside the UFO community. So there was a 1977 California State University professor named Alvin H. Lawson who published a paper entitled, "What Can We Learn from Hypnosis of Imaginary Abductees?" Much like Elizabeth Loftus, he worked with Dr. William McCall to plant false memories of alien abduction in the minds of subjects and then question them about their experience. And his subjects were able to recall remarkably detailed experiences, despite these things never happening to them. They were implanted in these people's minds. Lawson and McCall reported, quote, no substantive differences between their subjects and what they call real alien abductee stories. He said, one should be cautious about the results from hypnotic regression in UFO case investigations. A witness can lie or believe his lies and thus invalidate any investigation. A more common result may be that hypnotized witnesses subtly confuse their own fantasies with reality, whether without either the witness or the hypnotist being aware of what is happening.
One of the things that I thought was interesting that he said in that paper was that a witness can willfully lie, like while being under hypnosis. Not that I know anything about hypnosis, but just like my common understanding of hypnosis is that you would not be able to willfully lie because you're sort of like tapped into some deeper part of your brain or something, some like truth-telling part of your brain.
Right.
So like, obviously that's not true.
Can you lie under legit hypnosis though? I feel like you should be able to, because if you can't, then interrogations do not require waterboarding or torture. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
I think
Waterboarding is torture. Right?
I think it probably sort of depends on the person and what you believe is happening to you. But certainly, and it's sort of how you classify the lie too. Because if you take somebody like Jim Weiner, who has over a decade of time convinced himself that he was abducted by aliens, and then you put him under hypnosis, he's going to say, yes, I was abducted by aliens, because he actually believes it. It didn't happen. Like you don't get fact from hypnosis is the thing. Like you only get the opinion of the person who's under hypnosis.
Yeah, you're validating your beliefs.
Right.
Current beliefs.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when they implant these false memories, which is just, convincing the person that this actually happened, whether the hypnotist does it or somebody else or the person themselves, then you go under hypnosis, you are recalling what you believe is true, but it's just what you believe or the way that you recall the events that happened. Now, this paper should have been a landmark in the UFO community, but was largely ignored, probably because it didn't fit their narrative. And so, still believing that they were using this completely legitimate technique, Fowler, Webb, and Constantino hypnotized Jim Weiner and allegedly returned him to that night in the Allagash wilderness. They quickly found that Jim had a quote-unquote block, when it came to the missing time between their night fishing excursion and returning to their burned-out fire. He couldn't recall what happened during that time. The ufologists asked a series of questions, and they performed visualization exercises with Jim, trying to break through that block. And Fowler even described it as a, quote, alien-induced mental block, as if it had been put there purposefully by the aliens so he would forget what happened.
Wow.
Yeah, not because there was nothing to remember, but because the aliens had intentionally stopped him from remembering. Finally, Tony Constantino asked if something had happened to any of the other guys, and Jim broke down screaming, "Jack! They hurt Jack," his brother. With more prodding, the ufologists were able to get Jim to recall that some of the figures that he was encountering were hurting his brother's arm. He claimed that this took place in some strange room. He was sitting on a bench with Chuck Rack and Charlie Foltz, watching whatever this procedure was with his brother's arm. That was as far as they got that first night. But Fowler was convinced that they had hit on a real alien abduction survivor. And after that session, he wrote, "I was struck by the emotions that Jim manifested when reliving his experience. He literally displayed the fear, apprehension, and agitation that such an experience would provoke."
That's interesting. I just want to ask, because it's making me think of the paper that you had Katie and I read beforehand.
Yeah.
And the way that they conducted the hypnotic experiment with Betty and Barney Hill. And the way that they described it was when Betty and Barney Hill were talking about the light that they saw from their car, they spoke about it in a very animated, frightened way. Because I think similar to the Allagash Four, it's believed that they really did see something. Like they really did see like a plane in the sky going low or something freaky, you know. Mm-hmm. But then when they moved on to speaking about their actual abduction, their affectation grew calm, thoughtful. And that was kind of one of those things that the writer said that's kind of suspicious. Mm-hmm. Because why would they be speaking so calmly about what was clearly the scariest part of the entire ordeal?
Right.
So what's interesting to me is that Jim is now very animated and crying. And so I'm kind of like, not that I believe any of this, but I'm curious where that difference is.
Why Jim is so emotional about his experience versus the Hills, who were sort of
calm. Like it's probably hard to say, but it's an interesting dichotomy to me.
I think that the Hills were, well, and when I say the Hills, I mean Betty, pretty specifically. But Barney had some recollection here too. I think that they were a little bit more willing to dive into the actual abduction encounter with the beings, versus Jim, where in order to get over this, what Fowler calls a block, they had to force Jim into this state of heightened emotional response. And it wasn't until they could get him to break down that they were able to get the result that honestly the ufologists wanted. I suspect that this took a long time. I suspect that it was probably a little bit like an interrogation session, where eventually when you push hard enough, you just wear that person down, put them in an emotional state, and then they're more responsive to give you what you're looking for.
That makes it even more suspect to me. Obviously, I don't want to compare it to like true interrogation or torture where someone's like in danger of something terrible happening to them, like prison or, you know, whatever people are threatening when they're torturing someone. Mm-hmm. But like you forced this person into a state of emotional distress to like get a particular answer from them. And like this is also reminding me of what is in the paper you had us read, where it's proven that to get the most accurate information, you let someone talk in a free narrative. Mm-hmm. That is where you get the most accurate information, but it does not detailed. And then the more you push for details, you get more detail, but the information becomes less accurate.
Right.
And I thought that was so interesting because even not under duress, what that's saying is that when people are forced to remember to give you specific details, they will just start filling in the blanks, even if it's false. I kind of went off on a tangent there. But the point is that I find it extremely distressing that they took this person to a place of emotional distress to get the answer that they wanted. Because perhaps Jim Weiner wanted to go there too, Weiner, because he also felt that he was abducted. So like, I don't want to fully say that he wasn't a participant in this in some way. Like he clearly was. And he clearly also had like a idea of the situation himself that was similar to the people that were speaking to him. But I don't know. It just gets extra sketchy to me when you start talking about it in that way. Do you know what I mean?
It's a good point. I mean, I read that too, and I was like, wow, you're really leading him to water here.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jim's second hypnosis session was administered a month later. This came with a breakthrough, at least to Fowler. They were able to finally get description of the aliens from Jim. And remember, as we just said, the more descriptive you get, the less accurate it becomes. Jim said, "They're like bugs. They've got bug eyes. Their eyes aren't eyes on the front of their heads. They're more temporally located." Jim then proceeded to describe the typical gray alien face. Oblong, black eyes, no nose, thin slit of a mouth. And this would be compelling, but as we know, Jim was very familiar with Whitley Strieber's Communion aliens, and Fowler had already planted similar images in Betty Andreessen's mind earlier that decade. In his transcript of the hypnosis sessions, Fowler conspicuously leaves out the sections about how he got the descriptions out of Jim, saying only, Jim proceeded to describe the aliens in some detail, and then give a blow-by-blow representation of the traditional gray alien. It's also worth pointing out, we've talked about this a little bit before, but that alien imagery with their huge eyes might have some roots in human basal programming. Because during sleep paralysis, when your mind goes into that panic mode, you're awake, you're still dreaming and hallucinating, right? Mm-hmm. When you panic, your mind reverts to what we call rapid programming, where it starts hunting for things that will determine whether the environment is a threat or friendly. And the most important feature that we look for is eyes, because that tells you, are these predator eyes? Are these friendly eyes? All of that stuff. And so that desperate instinct makes you look for eye-shaped things, which is probably why the abductees in these stories always become so obsessed with these big black eyes.
I mean, could it be, this is just speculation, but could it be also that he is inadvertently pulling from his sleep paralysis memories when he's talking about this? Because I think that when you're so obsessed with aliens, when you are in sleep paralysis and you happen to be alien obsessed, you're going to see aliens. You're not going to see anything else. Like, isn't your mind going to jump to the stuff that you're most afraid of?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, he also thought it was real.
Yeah.
So to him, going back to those sleep paralysis sessions was going back to his experience of the alien abduction. So he already had this sort of concept of what he was experiencing. Oh, I'm laying flat. Oh, there's things looming over me. Maybe they're touching me, putting pressure on me, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
New theory. They all fell asleep on the boat and had sleep paralysis. I don't know.
I like it.
So Fowler and his team pressed on. An agitated Jim described how intently the aliens studied his brother Jack's genitals before leading him into another room. And then Jim was next, and the aliens examined him, again paying very particular attention to his genitals. Apparently, and here's our sexual assault warning for people. Apparently, the aliens collected a semen sample from Jim in a very exhaustively described manual method into a tube. And
okay.
look, I'm stuck because on one hand, none of this happened, and it's really silly to talk about aliens jerking off for men like some porno, right? But if you read the transcript of this was fucking traumatic for Jim to recall. And that is horrible because it didn't happen. None of it's real. It's all false memories that are being implanted by Fowler and his MUFON buddies.
Well, I was going to say, did Fowler implant this? Or like, is this something Jim came up with on his own? Was it weirdly prompted? Like, EJ, maybe that's where you were going and asking about the transcript?
Yes.
What were you going to say?
I guess I don't specifically know. I don't know where any of this came from as a genesis for Jim. You know, like this might have been a sleep paralysis session at some point prior to this. You know, we've talked about how sleep paralysis often has these connotations with like incubi and succubi attacks, which are obviously sexual attacks. So I don't know. But the encouragement of going from they're looking at my penis to they're manipulating my penis, they have a tube, was absolutely prompted by Fowler being like, what are they doing with that tube? What are they doing with your genitals? Yeah.
Well, maybe it's more like, are they touching your genitals? Are they?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Are they
exactly.
trying to get something from you? It's not like, what are they doing? It's, are they doing this exact thing?
Yes. Yeah.
Which is...
Yeah. Which then I'm like, what are y'all doing over there? I don't know. I like, that's a whole other piece of this that we don't have to get into. But like the amount to which people who believe that they were abducted also believe that the aliens were like sexually interested in them some way, whether that was for like figuring out how humans reproduce, like not, or like actually in a sort of like romantic kind of like in a kind of way. So like, I don't know what's going on there either, because I feel like that's a pattern in a lot of abduction stories too. And so why?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
But we don't need to talk about that.
There is this sort of sexual side narrative to some of this. Now with this particular story, the Allagash Four, they talk about it as if it's a sample collection process. Some of the other, sometimes you have female abductees who claim that they have been impregnated and the babies get removed during subsequent abductions, but they're like sort of incubating a human hybrid type of creature. I don't really know. My speculation is that, again, a lot of this is likely based off of sleep paralysis, and sleep paralysis will sometimes have that sexual type of side effect to it, again, with the incubi and succubi and that sort of stuff. I haven't done an incredibly deep dive into the sexual nature of aliens, and certainly not the romantic nature of aliens, which is something else altogether. Who was that? There was one woman who was being abducted across multiple times and actually ended up in like a romantic relationship with her captors. I don't remember what her name was now.
So like a Patty Hearst, like
Yeah.
Stockholm syndrome,
Yes.
but with aliens.
Yes. Okay, so still under hypnosis, they had Jim draw a depiction of the craft that took him. And no surprise, it looked exactly like a flying saucer. Oblong oval, ring running around the center, kind of looked like portholes around it. Again, this is not a groundbreaking image. Flying saucers of this caliber had been in the news and in sci-fi movies for 40 years at that point. But it convinced Raymond Fowler, and he wrote, Jim was experiencing a true regression wherein he relived his experience rather than a pseudo-regression wherein he might be merely remembering it. Which is, again, kind of this incredible way that he breaks down this pseudoscience. And he's like, well, when you put, and this is not based on anything, dude, but when you place people in hypnosis, sometimes they will have pseudo-regressions where they will just remember the events, but they won't actually be going through them again. But we had put him in a deeper, and I think also he's kind of patting himself on the back here. We had done a better job with him where we could put him right back to the events that actually happened. And so we're getting a truer recollection of what happened there.
Codified bullshit smells a lot less like shit. The more you can fucking say. I mean, I think like, God, I'm just thinking about like the science of chiropractory, and just the levels of bullshit. And even you go to any cult website. I just discovered a new cult the other day, and I'm so excited. Yeah, it's like. Oh, it's like the magical. I can't remember what it is. It's some bullshit name like magical realism. I don't know.
Great.
I don't know. Anyway,
I love magical realism.
I know, right? It's not magical realism though. It's like oh, I wish I could remember it. It's so bad though, and it's like, and of course it's a pyramid scheme. So people are losing hundreds of thousands of dollars to get the truth.
Oh man!
And it's all magic. It's like you learn magic, and it's very. It's very Crowley-esque. It's very much
it's kind of genius.
Yeah, there's a lot of like Thelema-esque shit going on.
Okay.
And but it's all these like hippie people that are just like they look like your doctor down the street. Like they look like very normal people.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're wielding magical swords and they're learning the secrets. And
oh my God.
they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars. And there's all these like, but you have to learn these steps. Like you have to learn these systems.
Like Scientology.
Yes.
Like you have to do the different levels.
Yeah. Like you need a system or no one's going to buy your bullshit.
Right.
Yeah. The more little weird rules you put in, the more people are like, well, this must be real if I have to do all these things.
Yeah, and it's difficult, and you need certifications, and you need to pay for these certifications. And I'm actually smart. I got the certification. I'm actually not as dumb as I thought I was.
Right.
And it's like feeding
that's
the ego.
A smart point.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like the extra little validation steps.
Yep.
Anyway.
Okay. Back on track.
Jack Weiner was next. His session was conducted with his wife present for emotional support. Once again, Fowler was immediately struck by the block that Jack had in his mind and said, like Jim, Jack had no recollections of an abduction experience. When the beam overtook the canoe, the next remembrance of both twins was suddenly being on the shore, calmly watching the object without any fear. Wow, I wonder why that is, guys. It couldn't have possibly been because nothing happened. It must have been that the aliens abducted them, performed a series of twisted experiments on them, and then used a Men in Black-style memory eraser to install a block that prevented them from recalling their experience. That definitely makes way more sense.
You're definitely getting into Occam's razor territory.
Yeah. No, let's just shoot Occam's razor right in the head and bury it out in the Meadowlands.
I just think it's so funny because every time he's like, we're putting them under, and they're like, nothing happened. He's like, why are you blocking this? This must be some kind of alien block.
Oh, man.
You could put literally anybody under hypnosis. He'd be like, they have a block.
Yeah. If you have nothing to say and the answer is, well, you're blocked, that's why you don't have anything to say.
Yeah.
It's not that nothing happened.
The brain is not an intestinal system.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like our bowels, y'all.
Oh, so funny.
So frustrated by this lack of response, Tony finally pushed Jack further and claimed that he put him in an even deeper trance that would allow him to recall more. I don't know how, but he did. After a lot of prodding, Jack suddenly recalled being naked. That happened because Tony asked him, Jack, look at your feet. And what do you see? And when Jack looked down, he said, I see my toes. And Tony immediately jumped on that and said, well, if you see your toes, where are your shoes? And right after that, Jack admitted, oh my God, I'm completely naked. Working his way up from the bottom. I have no shoes. Oh, I have no pants. Oh my God, I'm naked.
Look at your feet indicates that you have no shoes on.
Exactly. Not look down, look at your feet. We don't think of feet being clad in shoes.
No, also I was going to say, aliens, maybe they don't want that outside dirt on their floors.
That's true.
Yeah, the aliens were like, you got to take off your shoes.
Shoes off. This is a shoes off household, buddy.
Yes.
Get them off.
More prodding caused Jack to remember the presence of a strange creature, or several creatures. Again, these were described as oval-headed, large-eyed gray aliens. Jack described their mouths like turtle mouths, beak-like, and focused on their fingers, which he compared to spindly caterpillars. Once again, these aliens inserted something into Jack's penis. Despite the painful process, they telepathically communicated with him, telling him repeatedly, don't be afraid. After the abduction in Maine, Jack recalled seeing the aliens again. This time, it was in his own home, in his bed, meaning like he was in his bed, not the aliens were in his bed. The Greys allegedly used a beam very similar to the light that he saw in Maine and transported Jack and his wife Mary out of their house. At this point, Fowler stopped the regression because he didn't want to put the guy through more and had Tony bring him back to consciousness. But Fowler thought to himself, that means that this is a repeated event. Something else is going on here.
Please tell me they interviewed Mary.
Well, they will. They will. But first, my favorite quote about this whole thing comes from Mary, who's been watching this entire session. It was like 2 hours that this guy was under hypnosis.
Oh, which also I want to point out to our listeners, in the paper we read, having other people in the room besides the patient and the doctor performing the hypnosis is bad practice. So Mary should not have been in there. Yes. Continue.
Immediately after the session, Mary said, quote, "Are you guys for real?"
Am I being punked right now? Hidden cameras.
Where's Ashton Kutcher?
I know, where's Ashton Kutcher? Got your asses.
Oh my God. And she let this continue?
She did.
I mean, poor Jim. She must have been like, but like, what's she going to say?
Yeah.
If they're like, Jack said you were there. And she's like, get out of here, motherfuckers. Like,
yeah.
Oh, man.
So Fowler has now confirmed his own theory. The twins experienced the same thing, even down to aliens maybe even returning to check up on them later in their life. So to him, this is incredible. It's not only a confirmed sighting, it's a chance to document future abductions, potentially, because I guess the aliens are coming back. As luck would have it, Jack was also a very talented artist. And after his session, he drew several illustrations of the aliens, their devices, and the encounter. Not surprisingly, these match the cultural zeitgeist of aliens and also his brother's descriptions. And, you know, I'm willing to give people the benefit of the doubt, but I think it's kind of unbelievable to say that after Jim underwent hypnosis, recalled gray aliens giving him a physical, and then got his brother to do the same thing, he wouldn't have told him about the experience. By the time Jack was going under, really all the Raymond Fowler and the MUFON guys had to do was link the strands between what Jim had said to Jack and what Jack expected to come from that experience. Jack wanted Mary to go under hypnosis to learn about their later abductions, but Mary said no. So instead, Jack wrote to Charlie Foltz and asked him to participate. Charlie was more willing than Mary, and soon he was the next victim of MUFON's memory bumbling. A month later, Raymond Fowler and Tony Constantino sat down with Charlie Foltz. David Webb unfortunately had to miss that session because his son had a soccer game. Unsurprisingly, Charlie didn't remember being taken into the spaceship or the alien physical, at least not at first. It took quite a bit of prodding before he finally relented and remembered looking down from their canoe 100 feet above the lake. He was looking down at the canoe like he was hovering above it.
Can I interject here?
Yeah.
To me, it's super interesting that that is the first thing that he came up with because, you know, I go to therapy, and when I was in grad school, I was super stressed out. I was in therapy, and I was telling my therapist about how I was looking down at myself. Like I was having this stress moment and I could see myself from above. And she said, interesting. That is a super common like thing that happens if you're having like a really, really high stress moment, that you sort of have this like out of body experience where you see yourself from above. And so I'm wondering if Charlie is super stressed out because they're like have him under hypnosis and are like trying to get him to say all this shit that he doesn't remember, but it's like probably bad, right? If he's like, if people think that I've been abducted by an alien. So I think that it's interesting that the first thing that ends up happening is he sees the boat from above, because that's, according to my old therapist, a common response to stress. So I don't know. I'm just going to float that out there. It's like Fowler would.
That's
implant a thought.
Yeah.
No, it's a great thought though, because the other thing is important to keep in mind about this is at this point, he's the third guy. And these other two have had very traumatic experiences undergoing this hypnosis. They're recalling this thing that's repressed. I'm sure that there was some part of Charlie that was now thinking, oh my God, what have I forgotten? And also, I need to perform to that level because their story's sort of hinging on me going through the same thing.
I feel like there would be a lot of pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if your inclination was to still say, like, I don't remember anything. Your friends are there. Your friends have said all this stuff. Like, you don't want to say, like, hey, those guys are fucking crazy. This didn't happen.
Yeah.
But you're also like, did something crazy happen to me and I don't remember it? Like, I just think there would be a lot of heightened feelings. And then you have these guys like Fowler and his team probably being obnoxious, since we saw how they were with Jim and Jack in their like interrogation techniques or whatever.
Right. Again, they made Charlie focus on his feet, made him realize that he was looking at his shoeless toes, and then actually fully naked. Not surprisingly, Charlie went on to describe an encounter very similar to the previous stories, although he compared his aliens to, quote, Asian women instead of bugs or turtles. Apparently, it was hard for Tony and Raymond Fowler to keep Charlie focused, and Fowler wrote, Charlie was only reliving certain segments of his onboard experience. His mind seemed to jump indiscriminately to particular events.
Wow, Fowler's losing his touch.
I know,
Yeah.
right?
I was going to say indiscriminately to the events that Fowler was trying to get him to recall, because he doesn't remember anything. So there's no narrative for him to be telling you.
Exactly.
Yep.
Except Fowler didn't see it that way. He believed that this was all related to the trauma that Charlie had gone through.
The trauma.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean it that way. Trauma is bad.
But it's not real
For
trauma.
people who actually have it.
It's trauma
Yes.
that didn't happen. It's and in a way it kind of invalidates trauma that has happened. They called it a reluctance to remember, and they pushed on and finally got him worn down enough to describe his examination. Now, according to him, the aliens did not take a semen sample from him, but instead they took samples of his urine, feces, and some nail clippings. He was also an illustrator, and so Charlie drew what he remembered of his encounter, and it should be no surprise that it lines up with the zeitgeist of gray aliens, exactly the same as the other two. He did not draw Asian women. The final of the four was Chuck Rack, who Fowler described as a very tough, macho man. The MUFON men struggled to put him under full hypnosis and felt that he was only recalling the events rather than reliving them. Again, remember they had created these two sort of subcategories. You either recall or you re-experience. They couldn't get him deep enough.
With that, sorry, the recall relive dichotomy, is that something they just like personally created, or is that in like doctors that do actual hypnosis? Are those like two different levels?
It was the idea behind hypnotic memory regression. Yes. So I don't think that Fowler and his team came up with this. I think
Got
that it
it. Okay.
existed before that. Yeah.
So it is a real
Okay.
category.
Real in the sense that hypnotic memory regression is real.
Oh, okay. So it's not, because I know that like some legit doctors do hypnosis, right?
Yes, hypnosis is a real technique, and I don't want throughout we've done a lot of hypnotism bashing in this episode, but hypnosis is real, and can be a very useful therapeutic technique for people who have suffered trauma and things like that. But this idea of having these memories that are locked away that you will recall perfectly, pristinely, and truthfully is not real. And as Elizabeth Loftus, the person that the like preeminent authority on this has said time and time again, trauma, your heightened emotions are not an indication that you're dealing with a real memory. It's just that you are having an emotional response in the moment. Chuck Rack did recall genital manipulation by the aliens, but he didn't seem as bothered by it as his companions, and later said that their distress was probably because of their, quote, parochial school upbringings.
Wow, Chuck Rack. All
Yeah,
right. I
yeah.
mean, with a guy with a name like Chuck Rack, I can see him being very
He's like, hey, little turtle mouth. Let's get freaky.
turtle mouth. What's that?
That's because Jack said that they had turtle beaks.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought it was some
I was going to
euphemism.
say Chuck Rack
Okay.
is kind of like, meh.
Yeah.
Another Sunday.
You can't. Yeah, you can't get him into memory regression. He won't. You can't wrestle him into that. He's like, I guess what's happened. Whatever. Man.
It was actually kind of nice. He also revealed what happened to Charlie Foltz and maybe why he didn't remember the medical procedure, because allegedly those aliens had inserted some kind of tube into Charlie's chest and removed a sample from inside his rib cage in a motion that Chuck described as, quote, almost like peeling a potato.
Ugh. That's interesting because there's been a lot of confessions at this point, but
Yes.
I feel like Jim is the only one who remembered something happening to someone else, right? Like he remembered stuff happening to Jack,
Right.
his brother.
Correct. Yes.
But none of the others, like Jack and Charlie, well, Charlie couldn't really remember anything because nothing happened to him. Jack didn't remember things happening to other people. So Chuck is the only other one who's been like, oh, and then this happened to Charlie, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I didn't mention it, but a lot of them remembered like being in a room with the other people, and almost like a doctor's waiting room, that they were being taken into this other operating room one by one.
Interesting. I mean, that's how hospitals work. So I feel like that's like a common sort of like thought process.
Also,
It is, yeah.
isn't it nice that the aliens give you a place to wait and maybe some magazines, interstellar magazines or something like that? You have a little vending machine.
Now that I'm thinking about it, of course, Chuck would remember what happened to Charlie because we don't have the transcript, but how much do you want to bet that Fowler was asking Chuck about Charlie because he wanted to try and like get more information?
Oh, yeah.
Because Charlie hadn't said anything.
Oh, yeah.
Basically.
For sure.
I'm just wondering. I'm like, part of me is like, that's probably what it is. That's why he remembered stuff happening to Charlie, because Fowler was probably like, were your other friends there? What was happening to them?
Yeah.
Look over. Do you see Charlie?
Also, isn't it interesting because Charlie couldn't remember, and therefore anything that Chuck says is going to be considered what happened, because it's not like we have different accounts here. At Fowler's request, Chuck drew a similar picture to his companions, although his alien had more of a bulbous head and smaller eyes. The most fascinating part of Chuck's session actually comes a day later. In a letter that he wrote to Fowler, he wondered if he had been influenced by UFO books or the twins' dreams. He feared that these might have contaminated his testimony.
Chuck said that?
Chuck said that. He wrote that to Raymond Fowler in a letter.
Chuck is the most self-aware of all of these dudes,
Yeah.
let me just say.
You figured it out, Chuck.
He didn't. Yeah, like he didn't really take to the regression that well. Like he was. Yeah.
Well, spoiler alert, Chuck is going to have a hand in blowing this whole thing wide open.
Hell yeah,
later on.
Chuck! Get that dynamite,
Yeah, Chuck.
light it up.
Chuck and Mary were like,
Yeah.
what's going on here?
Yeah.
We got to get our boys out of this situation.
Exactly. Exactly.
Unfortunately, though, at the time, Raymond Fowler brushed off Chuck's concern and believed that instead, this guy, he's just in denial of his experiences.
How convenient.
Now thinking that he was sitting on a gold mine of evidence of alien abduction, Fowler turned his attention to the more recent events. Because if his interviews were to be believed, Jim and Jack Weiner were still seeing their visitors to that very day, and they were still being abducted. But we'll talk about their newest encounters and the ultimate unraveling of the Allagash abductions in our final episode.
Okay, I just want to say that if you really think someone's being abducted on a regular basis, fucking go to their house at night and stake it out, y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
I feel
Obviously.
like these days, in the days of like, Ring cameras and stuff like that, it would be really easy to just sort of be like, okay, I'm going to move one of the cameras into my bedroom.
Oh yeah.
watch at night and see if I get abducted, you know?
If this shit was real, there'd be aliens all over the place.
Yeah,
Captured
let me
everywhere.
tell you, it's not like we're talking about like ancient times. Camcorders existed.
They did.
That's true.
Yeah. So next time we're gonna talk about Mary's experience, and we're gonna talk about what ultimately comes out of this, and how Raymond Fowler is going to use this to not only support his own perceptions of what he's going through, but also get on the radar of a bunch of places like everyone's favorite TV shows. How about that? Thank you all so much for joining us this week. If you are feeling generous, head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com, click on the Support Us button at the top of the page, and consider leaving a donation or becoming one of our supporters there. And you can also check out our merch store, where we have lots of things for you to wear and display your support. And until next time, everybody, watch out for those aliens coming down, and be safe out there.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters, the 40 in History podcast. If you like the podcast, there's a couple ways you can show your support. You can tell your friends, you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform, or you can head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com and click on the Support Us button to leave a donation. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on socials at Slaying Monsters Podcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.